Imagine standing face to face with a creature that looks almost human but not quite. Its eyes meet yours with an intelligence you recognize, yet something feels deeply wrong. It's not an ape, but it's definitely not human either. This creature existed over 3 million years ago, and without it, you wouldn't be here today. But here's the twist. Scientists spent decades refusing to believe it was even real. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of human evolution, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see yourself and where we all came from. Picture Africa, 4 million years ago. The world is transforming in ways that will determine the fate of every species on the continent. The Pliocene Epoch isn't marked by volcanic eruptions or asteroid impacts. It's something far more insidious. The planet is cooling, rainfall is diminishing, and across Africa, the thick protective forests that have sheltered primates for tens of millions of years are slowly dying. In their place, endless grasslands stretch toward the horizon. These savannas offer no canopy to hide beneath, no branches to escape to when danger approaches. This is an existential crisis. Most species will make a choice, retreat deeper into the shrinking forests and hope they survive, or disappear entirely. But one small group makes a different decision. A decision so radical it will echo through millions of years and eventually give rise to you and me. They step down from the trees and onto the open ground, and they're about to become the most important species you've never heard of. Fast forward to 1924. In a limestone quarry in Taung, South Africa, workers are blasting through ancient rock when they stumble upon something extraordinary. A small skull, perfectly preserved with a face that stops them cold. It looks unsettlingly familiar. The skull eventually reaches Raymond Dart, a young anatomist at the University of the Witwatersrand. As he examines it, his hands begin to tremble. This child, who died roughly 3 million years ago, has features he's never seen combined in one creature before. The foramen magnum, the hole where the spine connects to the skull, is positioned directly underneath, not toward the back, like in apes. This creature walked upright on 2 legs. Dart names it Australopithecus africanus, the southern ape of Africa. He publishes his findings expecting scientific celebration. Instead, he's met with mockery and dismissal. The scientific establishment in the 1920s is convinced that humans originated in Europe or Asia. They point to the Piltdown Man, a supposed missing link discovered in England, as proof. The idea that humanity began in Africa with a creature that has an ape-sized brain is considered laughable. Dart's colleagues ridicule him. His paper is rejected. The Taung Child is forgotten. But Dart is right, and it will take 20 years for the world to realize it. By the 1940s and 1950s, archaeologists Lewis and Mary Leakey are working in East Africa's Great Rift Valley. Site after site, they uncover more Australopithecus fossils, more complete, more undeniable. The scientific community can no longer ignore the evidence. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Raymond Dart was vindicated. An Australopithecus, once dismissed as an irrelevant oddity, is now recognized as standing at the very threshold of what it means to be human. But here's where it gets complicated, because the more scientists study Australopithecus, the more they realize something profound. This creature defies every category we've tried to place it in. When you look at Australopithecus fossils, you're seeing evolution caught in the act of transformation. These creatures are biological paradoxes, part ape, part something entirely new. Their brains are small, only 400 to 550 cc's, about 1/3 the size of yours. There's no capacity here for language, abstract thought, or complex planning. By that measure alone, they're nowhere near human. Their upper bodies tell the story of their past. Long arms with curved fingers, flexible wrists built for gripping branches, powerful shoulders designed for climbing. Even millions of years after leaving the trees, they're still expert climbers. When a predator approaches, they don't fight or flee. They scramble up the nearest tree and wait it out. But from the waist down, everything changes. Their legs are longer, designed for walking, not climbing. Their knees lock when standing upright. An ape's knees don't do this. Their spines curve inward at the lower back, distributing weight in a way that only makes sense for a creature that walks on two legs all the time. This combination creates something unprecedented. A creature that lives in two worlds, but masters neither. Not quite ape, not quite human, something in between, awkwardly navigating an evolutionary transition. Their faces are still distinctly ape-like. Large jaws, prominent cheekbones, low-sloping foreheads. Even if they wanted to speak, the structure of their throats and mouths wouldn't allow it. Language, that defining human trait, remains beyond their reach. And then there's the pelvis. While it's shorter and wider than an ape's, providing better support for upright walking, it's not optimized enough to give birth to offspring with significantly larger heads. This biological limitation means the brains of Australopithecus descendants can't rapidly expand the way they need to for the next stage of evolution. Evolution has made a choice that seems almost cruel. It's given them the ability to walk upright, but locked them into a body that prevents the one thing that would allow them to become truly human: a bigger brain. So here's the conclusion that decades of research has led to. Australopithecus belongs to the hominin family. They're related to us, but they're not part of the genus Homo. They're not humans. They're our distant cousins. A branch of the family tree that helped pave the way but ultimately led nowhere. They opened a door that evolution would later close, so that another door, the one leading to us, could open instead. If you had to identify the single most important moment in the story of human evolution, it wouldn't be the invention of tools. It wouldn't be the development of language or the growth of the brain. It would be the moment Australopithecus stood up. In 1978, Mary Leakey and her team made one of the most stunning discoveries in paleontology. At Laetoli in Tanzania, preserved in ancient volcanic ash 3.7 million years old, they found footprints. Not scattered impressions, but a clear trail stretching over 20 meters. These footprints are hauntingly familiar. The toes point forward, not splayed out to the sides like an ape's. The heel strikes first, then the weight rolls forward through the ball of the foot, exactly the way you walk. There's no indication the creatures who made these prints ever dropped to all fours. This is fully developed bipedal walking, as refined as yours or mine. What shocked scientists wasn't just that Australopithecus could walk upright, it was when they started doing it. These footprints are older than any evidence of significant brain expansion. For decades, science had assumed the big brain came first, and walking upright came later as a consequence. The Laetoli footprints proved we had it backwards. Walking upright came first, and it was this single change that made everything else possible. Standing upright on the African savanna wasn't just a quirky evolutionary experiment. It was a survival strategy that offered cascading advantages. First, elevation meant visibility. When you're standing upright, you can see farther across the grasslands. Wild those 5 predators that might ambush you from tall grass become visible from much greater distances. Early warning means the difference between life and death. Second, efficiency. Moving on 2 legs requires significantly less energy than the 4-limbed gait of apes. Australopithecus could travel longer distances in search of food, water, and shelter without exhausting themselves. In an environment where resources are scattered and unpredictable, this is crucial. But the third advantage is the most revolutionary. Walking upright freed their hands. Think about what this means. Suddenly, mothers can carry their infants while moving, rather than having to cling to branches. Food can be gathered and brought back to the group instead of eaten on the spot. Objects can be held, manipulated, thrown, and eventually, millions of years later, those free hands will craft tools. Free hands also enable new forms of social interaction. Gestures, pointing, offering food to others. These simple actions lay the groundwork for cooperation and communication in ways that were never possible before. Even without language, Australopithecus is beginning to develop the earliest forms of culture. Bipedalism also forces the entire body to adapt. The pelvis shortens and widens to support internal organs. The spine develops an S-curve to distribute weight. The knees strengthen to lock in place. The feet develop arches to absorb impact and propel the body forward with each step. Australopithecus never becomes human. They never develop language or sophisticated tools or large brains, but they walk like humans. And in doing so, they lay the foundation for every trait that will define Homo sapiens millions of years later. They're the first to step out of the forest and onto the long road that leads to us. Living on the ground during the Pliocene isn't freedom. It's a gamble with death every single day. Australopithecus is small. Adults stand only 1.1 to 1.4 meters tall, weighing 30 to 50 kilograms. Females are often half the size of males, making them especially vulnerable. They have no claws, no fangs, no protective armor. In a fight with almost any predator, they lose. And the predators are everywhere. Hyenas with bone-crushing jaws patrol the grasslands, capable of killing an Australopithecus child in seconds. Leopards hide in the tall grass, perfectly camouflaged, waiting for a moment of inattention. Saber-toothed cats like Dinofelis and Homotherium, with elongated canines like knives, can bring down prey with a single bite to the neck. Near water sources, massive crocodiles wait with inhuman patience. One careless moment while drinking, and it's over. The danger isn't limited to the ground. The sky holds threats too. When scientists examined the Taung Child skull, they found puncture marks consistent with eagle talons. Young Australopithecus could be snatched from the ground and carried away before anyone could react. It's no surprise that the average lifespan is under 20 years. Every sunrise brings a simple question: will I survive until sunset? But Australopithecus isn't helpless. Their greatest asset is the very thing that makes them evolutionary oddities. They can still climb trees. When danger approaches, they bolt for the nearest tree and scramble up to safety. Most ground predators can't follow. Trees become daytime refuges and nighttime sleeping quarters. Interestingly, juvenile Australopithecus still have an opposable big toe, perfect for gripping branches. But as they mature, this feature disappears, reflecting the gradual shift from tree-dwelling to ground-dwelling life. Climbing trees solves the immediate problem of not being eaten. But long-term survival requires more. Finding food during dry seasons, when plants wither, protecting the young, competing with other species for increasingly scarce resources. Australopithecus can't attack like a carnivore. They can't run like a gazelle. They have no weapons beyond their wits. Their only advantages are vigilance, keen observation, group cooperation, and the intelligence to avoid danger rather than confront it. In this suffocating, merciless environment, Australopithecus develops the traits that the Homo lineage will later inherit and perfect: patience, adaptability, social bonding, and above all, an unbreakable will to survive.
Humanity didn't emerge from paradise.
It emerged from a species that learned to endure hell. In a world filled with creatures faster, stronger, and more dangerous, How does Australopithecus survive? The answer lies in two unexpected places: their teeth and their hands. Look closely at Australopithecus fossils and you'll notice something unusual. Their tooth enamel is extraordinarily thick, and their molars are massive, far larger than you'd expect for a creature their size. These teeth are built for one purpose: crushing. While other animals avoid hard-to-process foods, Australopithecus specializes in them. Underground tubers, seeds with thick shells, fibrous roots, gritty plants that wear down normal teeth. In the harsh savanna where dry seasons can last months, being able to eat what others can't is a massive advantage. When food is scarce and other species are starving or migrating vast distances, Australopithecus just digs and chews. It's not glamorous, but it works. Their diet isn't limited to plants either. Some fossils show enlarged, strengthened incisors, perfect for tearing meat from carcasses. They're not hunters, but they're opportunistic scavengers, taking advantage of predator kills when they can. This makes them true omnivores, capable of adapting to whatever food is available. But here's where the story takes a shocking turn. In 2011, in Kenya's Rift Valley, scientists made a discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about tool use. They found over 150 stone artifacts, fractured cores, sharp-edged flakes, and large stones used as anvils. These tools were dated to 3.3 million years ago. They were named the Lomekwi culture. Here's the problem. These tools are older than Homo habilis, the species long credited as the first toolmaker, by over 500,000 years. If Homo didn't exist yet, then who made them? All evidence points to Australopithecus. Found in the same geological layer as the tools were Australopithecus fossils. The way the stones were struck, the angles of percussion, the selection of specific rock types, all indicate intentional action. Australopithecus may not have been as intelligent as later Homo species, but they discovered something revolutionary. When you strike two stones together in the right way, you create a sharp edge. And that edge can cut, chop, and slice in ways fingers never could. The strongest evidence comes from Ethiopia. On large animal bones, archaeologists found cut marks, straight, deep incisions consistent with stone flake edges. And beside those bones, Australopithecus fossils. This discovery is profound. Australopithecus may have been the first species in human evolutionary history to use stone tools. Even if their purpose was simple, slicing meat, cracking bones to extract nutrient-rich marrow, this behavior represents a cognitive leap. It's the earliest glimmer of technology, the first time a species deliberately modified the environment to solve a problem. Bone marrow is packed with fat and calories. Exactly the kind of energy-dense food that could support brain development in future generations. Australopithecus didn't understand this, but that simple act of cracking open a bone brought evolution one step closer to creating creatures with the intelligence to change the world. Not strength, not speed, not claws. Teeth and stones allowed Australopithecus to survive. And in doing so, they planted the first seed of technology in the human evolutionary line. The very thing that would one day allow Homo sapiens to dominate the planet. Australopithecus wasn't a single species frozen in time. Over millions of years, they spread across Africa, adapting to different environments and branching into multiple distinct species. Their range stretched from East Africa. All were once home to Australopithecus populations. Thanks to their adaptability, the genus survived for more than 2.3 million years, longer than any Homo species, including us. Some of the most well-known species include Australopithecus afarensis. The species of the famous Lucy fossil lived in East Africa from about 3.9 to 2.9 million years ago. With a blend of ape-like and human traits, Afarensis is considered one of the strongest candidates for being ancestral. Australopithecus africanus, the species of the Taung Child, appeared later in southern Africa and showed even more human-like characteristics. Australopithecus anamensis was even older than Afarensis. It's viewed as a transitional form from Ardipithecus and even earlier hominin. Australopithecus sediba, the youngest species, lived around 2 million years ago, just as the Homo genus was rapidly expanding. Here's what's fascinating. These species didn't exist in a neat, linear sequence where one evolved into the next. Many lived at the same time. Afarensis and Anamensis overlapped for at least 100,000 years. Evolution doesn't work like a ladder, with one species replacing another. It's a branching tree, with multiple lineages existing simultaneously, sometimes competing, sometimes coexisting peacefully. The relationship between Australopithecus and Homo is one of the most debated topics in paleoanthropology. Most evidence suggests that Homo habilis, the first human species, descended from an Australopithecus lineage, most likely a Afarensis or a very close relative. When Homo habilis appeared around 2.4 million years ago, many Australopithecus species were still alive. This means the first humans and the last non-human ancestors lived side by side, sharing water sources, competing for food, and occupying the same territories. Imagine it. A group of Australopithecus digging for roots near a stream, while a group of Homo habilis cracks bones for marrow just a few hundred meters away. Two branches of the same family tree existing in the same moment. One on the verge of extinction, the other beginning a journey that will lead to cities, art, science, and space travel. A few 100,000 years later, with the arrival of Homo erectus, equipped with larger brains and far more sophisticated tools, the balance tips decisively. Australopithecus begins to fade, not overnight, but gradually, retreating into smaller and smaller pockets until they vanish entirely. For over 2.3 million years, Australopithecus thrived across Africa, but around 2 million years ago, they began to disappear. Not in a catastrophic event, but in a slow, quiet decline that stretched over hundreds of thousands of years. What happened? Around this time, Earth entered the early Pleistocene Epoch. Colder, drier, more unpredictable. The already sparse forests continued to shrink. Grasslands expanded even further. The plant species that Australopithecus relied on began to disappear or become scarce. At the same time, a new and far more formidable competitor was rising: Homo erectus. Compared to Australopithecus, erectus had a brain nearly twice as large. They were taller, faster, and far more mobile. Most importantly, they had mastered tool-making to a degree Australopithecus never could. While Australopithecus occasionally used crude stone flakes, Homo erectus crafted sophisticated hand axes and butchery tools. There's no evidence of direct violence between the two genera, but competition for resources, water, food, territory, would have been intense. And in that competition, Australopithecus was simply outmatched. As Homo erectus expanded across Africa and eventually into Eurasia, Australopithecus populations contracted. They were pushed to the margins, forced into less favorable environments, and their numbers dwindled. Australopithecus sediba, the youngest species in the genus, is a poignant example of this transition. Living around 1.98 million years ago, sediba had many traits closer to Homo than to other Australopithecus species. It seemed to be on the cusp of something new, but instead of evolving further, sediba disappeared, making way for the rise of Homo erectus. The extinction of Australopithecus wasn't a tragedy, it was evolution at work. As conditions demanded greater intelligence, better tools, and faster adaptability, Australopithecus, constrained by their biological limitations, couldn't keep pace. But their disappearance wasn't an ending. It was a transition. Because in the fading of the Australopithecus lineage, a new genus emerged from the shadows, Homo, taking the first tentative steps on the path that would eventually lead to you. Australopithecus has been gone for 2 million years. All that remains are bones buried in ancient sediment and footprints frozen in volcanic ash. But those fragile remnants tell a story more important than we often realize. Before there were humans, there was something almost human. A creature that walked like us, lived in groups like us, faced death and hardship with the same desperate will to survive that we carry today. They weren't our direct ancestors in the strictest sense, but they paved the road we would eventually walk. They had no language to tell their stories, no tools sophisticated enough to leave a lasting mark on the world, no cities, no art, no science. But they had something just as powerful: resilience. They made it possible for something else to emerge, something smarter, more adaptable, more capable of reshaping the world. That something was us. So the next time you take a step, remember, you're walking the way Australopithecus taught us to walk 3.7 million years ago in the ash of an African volcano. Every footprint you leave echoes theirs. They may not have become human, but they made humanity possible. And perhaps buried in those ancient footprints, there's one last question worth asking. What would have happened if they hadn't disappeared? What if evolution had chosen them instead of us? We'll never know. But we can honor them by understanding this: they were never failures, they were pioneers. And every human being alive today owes them a debt we can never repay.